Welcome to another episode of Lebanon Historical Society Presents. My name is Edward Ashe, and I'm the curator of the Lebanon Historical Society. This episode will be about postcards and collectors. And I think I'll turn it over to them and they can introduce themselves.
It turns out that since I thought this was a good idea, they're telling me I need to be the MC. And since I never had much problem talking, I guess I can do that. We have 6 folks here tonight who've been collecting postcards for a variety of time and for a variety of reasons. And so what we thought we would do first is ask each one to just speak briefly about who they are and how they got into this business, and then each person will take a few minutes and talk about a few of their favorites. So I would say let's start on this side with Ray and Becky.
So I'm Ray Book. I live in West Lebanon here. The reason I got into postcards, I like history, and I want to do some collecting, but I didn't want to spend a lot of money. And postcards, you can keep in a notebook and not spend a lot of money and still enjoy them. And
Paul?
I really don't remember how or when I got into this. I was in construction most of my life here in the Lebanon area, and I enjoyed the old postcards because I can see the past. I can remember well before the fire in Lebanon, when Lebanon was a nice town, nice New England town, and before everything went modern, and the main street of Lebanon, and I've been fortunate enough to have worked in and rebuilt a lot of the older structures in Lebanon area, and I find a lot of them, pictures of them and postcards and details about them. That's basically how I got into this. I'm recently retired, and it just gives me something to do in the spare time.
Carl?
Well, my name's Carl Porter. I live up in the Hardy Hill area in Lebanon, and I also serve as Lebanon City Historian. I started my collection actually was a wedding present for my wife. I kept on eyeballing this postcard collection in a local antique shop and looking at it, but man, I wasn't going to spend that. Yeah. But I ended up getting it for the night before our wedding. And you know, postcards are really something nice to look at. It's a little snapshot from the era. It shows how Lebanon was, how Lebanon transformed. Also shows different ways of trying to, kind of get Lebanon out. I mean, if you think about it, all these postcards are getting mailed out to different areas in the country and the world. So, the little snippets of our town are showing up all over the country, which is, really interesting to look at, to think about. Especially when you buy a postcard and you can actually read a message someone sent on it, and see where the postcard had been. But that's pretty much, it's a nice leisure activity that sometimes costs more money than you intend.
Right?
Yeah, my name is Ray Lagasse, and I grew up in the Lakes region of New Hampshire, and when I got out of the service, my family had moved to Lincoln, New Hampshire. And as you probably know, there were a lot of old hotels before they all burned, and many of them had a lot of postcard collections, if you want to call it that. And as a result, I ended up at a yard sale and so forth, seeing some of this stuff, and immediately was interested. I've always been interested in history, and it was, as Ray said, an inexpensive way to get involved. So that's where I started, and I started with the White Mountains and Lincoln, and then expanded to every town I ever lived in, and then the towns next to the town I lived in, and golf courses. I accidentally got into golf courses, and because I do play golf, and I didn't think there were that many out there, but I think I've got around 75 golf courses of New Hampshire, which when I started, they were hard to find, but it's fun. It's interesting. I haven't done it for probably 10 years, unless I see something that I really want, but it's gotten out of my price range as a retired teacher. So basically, it's a lot of fun, and as everybody else has mentioned, you get a nice taste of history, and you get the back of the card is sometimes just as interesting, if not more so, than the front.
My name is Art Pease. I came to Lebanon in 1971 to teach history to high school. And one of the first courses I had to teach was Lebanon history. So I had to learn a little bit. Actually, quite a lot of the cards I have used as slides that Dave Miller, who'd been here before me, made into slides. Carl was a student of mine at one point. I had at least one or two of the book children in class, so there's connections here. And as with all these folks, an interest in history, an interest in Lebanon, and a fun way to find out a bit about the past. So with that, Ray, you're up.
Well, I picked a series of three series of postcards that I'd like to present here, and I was told to have four postcards, but I'm going to have more than four. But anyway, this first series is actually in Lebanon, on the green, and the first postcard shows the Kimball building that was between the Old Town Hall and the War Memorial. And it's a nice old picture of the Kimball building and another building. And then the next postcard is down the street toward the east, shows the Old Town Hall, and all you can see is the War Memorial. But the other building, the Kimball building and the other building are gone, so I'm assuming that they raised those buildings to build the Rogers Hotel. And so the third picture is the Old Town Hall, the Rogers Hotel, and the War Memorial. So it kind of flows time-wise, probably around the turn of the century, since the Rogers Hotel was built around 1912. On the second set, we go to West Lebanon, and it's a picture of the new Johnson commercial building that was built, I'm not sure when. It sat where the old post office is now, on is it Depot Street, I believe, that goes down around. And I was fortunate to find another picture of postcard of the interior, which you don't see very often, of the store that was there, the Whitcomb and Haskins store, which was, to me, it was interesting of West Lebanon history, since I live in West Lebanon. And then the second set, the identical postcards, but one says Sizeville, New Hampshire, and the other says Lebanon, New Hampshire. And it's of the garish covered bridge over the Mascoma, and it's a shot looking north, right on Longacres Nursery Center. And I thought this was interesting because of two identical cards in two different places, but back in the older days, that area was referred to as Sizeville because they had a factory that made size. And the other interesting thing, I looked up some of the history, and the first bridge that was across this area was put in like 1792. And then the first covered bridge was put in, which was the Garish Bridge, in 1810. And that continued on up until at least 1924, because I have another picture of the Garish Bridge in 1924. And one little side note on it, it was also called the Staple Bridge, which I never heard of. But looking that direction, the river was in the shape of a staple, so they referred to it as a staple bridge. So those are my cards that I thought were interesting to present, and I've got numerous other ones, but those are the ones that kind of caught my fancy.
Paul?
I didn't really pick out any particular cards. I have so many that I'm fond of. I grew up in the often School Street on Spring Street, and at the time the old Catholic church was there. It was closed up, and of course we weren't supposed to be in it, but as kids we were the School Street was my playground. I didn't go to the School Street school, but I played in the playground. And of course, at one time, it was the high school. the third floor, which isn't there anymore, was the high school. In fact, there's a few cards here that listed as both the high school and the grammar school. This one calls it the grammar school.
Yeah.
It's you know, I've got different views of it, but the one that I guess if I wanted to feature cards would be the School Street. I have several views of School Street when it was a beautiful street before the blight came through and wiped out all the trees and so on. It was basically a dirt road. Judge Hibbett's, I don't know if any of you remember Judge Hibbett. He was an older gentleman. I don't know if he was a real judge, but he was, that's what he was known as. That was his house, which is on the corner of School Street and Abbott Street. He lived there by himself, and then his sister came and lived with him. He had a big old white beard, scary looking gentleman, but very, very nice. That was part of my, in fact, us kids used to play on his lawn. We didn't have a lawn, so. And actually, this isn't even a postcard, but it's a picture of a covered bridge that was at the bottom of School Street, of Spring Street. I remember it because we used to do something that I would certainly have given my kids the double for, my grandkids. We'd start at the top of Spring Street, ride our bicycles down, shoot through the bridge, and the road dropped off, and we'd become airborne. I mean, we did that many times. I've never found a postcard of it, but somewhere I came across that photo of it, which I was real happy to have.
Did you ever slide down the hill? Was the hill kept, or was it kept?
Pine Street was our place where we slid. Pine Street and Elm Street. We never, there's too much traffic.
Okay.
But, you know, there's some good pictures. This is a postcard that shows School Street by the cemetery just before the school. The road was all dirt. So, you know, basically those and the ones of the old Carter building, I was fortunate to I was a supervisor for the renovation of the old Cottage building, and very much involved with that. It's quite a building, it's got quite a history. And I had workers all over the building. I happened to walk into one room where they were tearing down the ceiling, and as I walked in, I see two paper objects fall. And I walked over, and the first one was on a calendar that was so old and dried out. It was 1914, I think it was. The minute I picked it up, it crumbled. But the second thing, believe it or not, was a postcard that was sent from Texas, addressed to my father's cousin, Napoleon Tremblay, on Pine Street.
Isn't that amazing?
The date was in the 60s, early 60s, and I happened to be in Texas at that time. I was in the service there. But what are the odds that I could walk in the room, pick up a piece of paper with my last name on it, and a postcard?
Well, the selection I had for postcards reflects, well, me being the youngest in the room. And it also reflects some of my involvement with history in different areas as well. But more personally, my grandparents lived up on Hardy Hill. They had a farm up there. And growing up, they'd always, whenever we went out to eat, it wasn't down in West Lebanon. It was one of three places. It was Woolworth's, it was Harry's, or it was the Riverside Grill. And so the first one that I picked out was just one of the Riverside Grill, because I think anyone my age that grew up in Lebanon still remembers the big sign sitting on top of the building. And you know, it's not there anymore, but it's, you know, it still is in everyone's mind, that's for sure. And the other thing that kind of stands in my mind from growing up is the old Carter and Churchill factory that used to stand on Parkhurst Street. My generation, it was old, run down, with a big for sale sign painted on the side of it. So that's the most salient memory I have of that building, but I came across a postcard that it looked a heck of a lot better condition, at least the building did on the postcard. So I kind of picked that one just from, you know, how I remembered seeing the building compared to actually how it really was. Aside from the fact, like any old factory building in Lebanon or any New England town has about 10 different additions on it over time. I actually pulled out a fifth one just for the heck of it, talking about, Paul Tremblay talking about the Lebanon before the fire. I grew up post-fire, post-mall, post-urban renewal. So for me, I've always known the mall area, and in learning Lebanon's history, realizing that there was a road that went through there and how different Lebanon was in the downtown area. I came across a postcard, actually I think it was part of the wedding present, that just shows the different traffic layout because of Hanover Street going through the mall, of what's now the mall area, and just how, probably in light of the current striping on Colburn Park, probably a better traffic pattern as well. At least a little safer traffic pattern. But it just kind of gives an overview. It shows some of the tops of the buildings that are no longer there. It shows the railroad bridges. It's a beautiful shot. So, in my introduction where I was talking about how postcards show the transformation of different parts of town, I pulled one of looking north on Main Street, West Lebanon, which literally is just about across the street from where we are tonight. It shows the old fire station. It shows the schoolhouse with the clock tower, which is now a Ledyard Bank, and it shows Holy Redeemer Church, which is now the building that fits in the best on Main Street, Advance Auto Parts. But it just shows, what a radical transformation could happen over the course of 100 years. Just about 1920, 2012, about close enough. Yeah, because these buildings are certainly here 100 years ago. And lastly, I took one from the center of town that is the Whipple block and the bank block, probably shortly after the bank was constructed in 1894. For me, as personal interest, I belonged to the Masonic Lodge, and at this time the lodge was in the 3rd floor of that building. And the window this is the best postcard, you can see that corner window. That window is actually still preserved, and the little half-moon window is still preserved up in the attic of the new lodge building. But it just shows, Whipple Block is still a beautiful building, but back when it was first constructed, it was more so because it had the kind of Queen Anne architecture, the nice pitched roof, and which unfortunately caused 2 fires. But it just shows a nice, just kind of, it has a little dirt, it has a little bit, you can see that this is at least when Lebanon started getting electricity, but it just shows some more of the evolution of town. If you went back 50 years from that, you'd have an old hotel building and some old wooden shops. So, it kind of captures, starting through my generation, what things look like to what I remember them as growing up to even what they are now. I mean, the Carter and Churchill factory was completely leveled and rebuilt, almost identical. Different color, but almost the same footprint.
Raymond?
The ones I selected mostly because of they have a personal touch to them for me. I think this is the first postcard I ended up collecting. It was the main street of Lincoln, New Hampshire, with all the mill houses, and it's a dirt street. And it doesn't give, it says 1910, but I think the picture was probably taken a little before then. But this, as near as I can tell, this is the one that got me started. I just got interested, and we could identify a couple of the houses in the picture, and when I did this in the 50s, and could tell who was living there at that time. The second one is a picture of the main street in Belmont where I grew up. And from the cars, there's nothing on the back, but from the cars, it looks like a 50, 53, 54, 55, and I left there in 51. But the main street, I never took a picture of the main street. And it's kind of a nice, it looks just exactly like it did, back in the 50s. And it had a little nostalgia with that one. The next two are rather personal. This is a postcard of the sled dog races in Laconia, New Hampshire, where they had the annual world championship, or whatever they called it. And my father was a sled dog racer back in the 20s and early 30s. And this is a picture of him starting, and his dog team starting in front of the bank in Laconia. And obviously I found that interesting. This is a picture of the Scytheville Bridge and of the Slayton Farm, which is where I've lived for 42 years now. And by looking at this, I could see that there are outbuildings way behind the farm that I'd heard about, but I've never seen. And kind of interesting to have a picture of it.
That's also, Ray, one of those cyanotypes.
Yeah.
It's printed in blue. It had something to do with isn't that poisonous maybe? Seriously, I think there's something about the blue that was a mercury base or something that they didn't do it a lot, but you'll see a few of those around.
And the next to last one is a picture of the Hanover Country Clubhouse. I've tried to get them, once they lost the ski jump, I said, it'd be a nice one to, they could put as their logo, but haven't had much luck getting it really is, it looks like a little Bob house, you know, it's rather interesting, and maybe they don't want it as a logo. The last one I showed to Arthur, I brought it because I thought somebody here might be able to help me a little bit. It's a copper that has been attached to a postcard. And somebody made a postcard and never did anything with it because there's no writing on the back. But it looks like it's, you know, it was actually hammered or etched or something of the old man of the mountains. And I've had it for years, and I've never found anybody who could tell me anything as to. It must have been somebody
did it
on his own, and just took the time to do it.
It looks like one of the postcards I have. I clicked
Yeah.
Old Man Mountain postcards.
Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely, yeah, it's definitely a copy.
Somebody did a good.
Somebody did it, yeah. I hate people who tell me.
But that's basically the ones I selected.
Very good. Well, I've got 4 cards for their picture and then one for what's written on the back. This one is a picture of the Memorial Hall, so the Memorial Building. And the only thing that is interesting about it, it's got this little what is it, a banner, it's a little ribbon attached to it. You know, I don't know, it was post 1907, at least the card. It says, "Greetings, James B. Perry, Corps 62, June 18, 1914. So it would be before the war started, before World War I. And James B. Perry was a member of the 5th New Hampshire from Lebanon, and then the auxiliary was named after him, or the JR post and the auxiliary were named after him. This one is the World War I memorial. I wonder where it is. I wonder if Ed knows where the thing is. There's now the World War I one is on a granite block on the green, but this was a freestanding. Made the date in pencil says February 26, 1919, and here it's on the green. There's those memorial buildings right behind it. So how long it was there, you know, when the things changed, and I'm wondering, you know, if that's even around anywhere.
It might be in storage.
Yeah,
somewhere.
that's what I wonder. I assume it's all metal. Just it was Lebanon Machine Company that made it, but and then this one is one of the town hall, which I think I figured. Well, looking at it, this picture here is Washington crossing the Delaware. You know, the famous Emanuel Leutzer painting of Washington in the ice, and it's some sort of a it's either July 4th or it might be there was a big parade in 1919 after World War I. Whether that's it, you know, I don't know when it was, but it's a pretty neat picture. And this last one, because of its uniqueness, at least to me, is the inside of the Hotel Rogers. Shows the lobby of the old Hotel Rogers. I have no idea if the Rogers House looks like that. I presume not. But I've got, you know, you get Hotel Rogers all over the place.
Right.
But this is the only one inside that I had ever seen. Although people are looking, maybe we're going to find another one here. If you got one, holla. And then the one that I'll end with is, as I say, I buy them for the picture. But you like to read what's on the back, and this is one of my favorites. This was sent to Mrs. John Martin, Norwich, Vermont, from Lime Center, July 30th, 1912. Everybody has gone blackberrying but Rose and I. Our husbands say we can't have a team till after haying. Guess we shall get the machine work done this week, and then I shall be on the go all the time. Yeah, that's what I. So, Jess, if somebody's got one you want to mention, or
Sure, the one that got cut from the list in
Okay.
consultation with my wife. asking her for some advice last night on which ones, whether it's individual one or more of a shot of more buildings. I came across this, probably we were chasing each other around the Enfield Community Building when I found this one, at a postcard show, is a mailing card for the Rockland Military Academy, which used to be up on Seminary Hill. Formerly, before that was the Tilden Family Female Seminary, and after that became West Lebanon High School.
Yeah.
But for a short time in the early 1900s was, actually late 1800s and early 1900s, was a military academy, and kind of fell out of favor when World War I was starting to ramp up. But on the back side it says that's a Rockland private mailing card authorized by an act of Congress May 18th, 1898. I mean, it's just something relatively interesting.
Well, that's one of those
From
very early ones then, because I think it was, I don't know the exact date, it was 1898 when postcards were allowed to be mailed, when you could mail postcards. And those didn't have a divider on the back. And you weren't allowed to write on the back anything but the address.
Right.
So that's why you see on the front, people have written, and that's why you see some of those have a smaller picture on the front,
Right.
so that there was room to write a little something.
1907, they changed it.
Then you could divide it, yeah.
I bought one just recently. I bought it for a friend that lives in Claremont. I thought it was a building that he owned, but after I got it, I realized that it wasn't. It's the old Moody Hotel.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But the strange thing is, it's written across the back, but it's written right straight across. I don't know how it ever got mailed because there's no address on it.
Oh, I see.
But it's all in French. I couldn't tell you what it said.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing is, on these old cards, they have the name and the town, and that's it.
Oh, that's right, yes.
No address, just
Everybody knew everybody else.
everybody
Yeah.
knew everybody.
One of the things I've noticed in looking through these is that these were used like the telephone, in a sense. I mean, you'd get a card would go to somebody, and I'll be over this afternoon, or at least tomorrow, and they were going to get it. And somebody was telling me that it was not uncommon, even in a place like Lebanon, for there to be 3 or 4 deliveries a day in the village area of mail. And so, you could mail, somebody would take your mail from up on High Street, and somebody out on out on School Street to send a little card, I'll be over at 1 o'clock, and they'd get it before you got there.
Early version of email.
Yeah, right, I mean, it was, so you get, I don't know if I've gotten any that quite say 1 o'clock, but you get a lot of them, and I'll be there tomorrow, kind of thing. One of the things that I've begun to do is I buy cheap cards and send them to people. So I've got a list of probably 30 or 40 people. You folks do the same thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, I got one from you, actually.
Oh, yes, you've got,
I think back when I worked at the bank.
yes, that's right. And so that's fun, looking for cards from places and send those to them.
Especially places that they are familiar with, or friends who have places on a lake. I'll find an old card of Ossipee or Winnipesaukee, and I'll send it to
Oh, yeah.
that person. I would be thrilled to get a letter like
Yeah.
that.
There are all kinds of Ossipee cards. See, I look for Orford too, where I grew up. And the O's,
Yeah.
there's 100 Ossipee for every one Orford.
I like the fact that when you read the back of the cards, it's not just hello, how are you? It's like you were saying, I'm going to be there. But there was another one, they're traveling. And
Oh, yeah.
they've seen this in New Hampshire. And we go see Old Stonehead. And I'm going, what was it? Oh,
The old
they're
man.
French, broken English,
Yeah.
and they're talking about the
The old
man
man
on
of the mountain.
the
Yeah,
mountain.
sure,
And it
sure.
was really fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, as all of you started to collect, have you been able to keep it pretty much what you started with, or have you expanded also to
Well,
other areas?
mine started as Mary Hitchcock Hospital, because I worked there for 38 years. And I wanted old postcards of Mary Hitchcock. Well, I started that, and then I thought, oh, Lebanon, I can live in Lebanon, West Lebanon. The pictures at the old McDonald's had these pictures of Main Street, the one you
Yes,
had.
yes.
And we were teasing, a bunch of us retired guys would go out for coffee, and we'd say, you cover me while I slip that under my coat. Well, 2 weeks later, a friend of mine found it on eBay and bought it for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And, so I have Hanover and Mary Hitchcock, Lebanon, West Lebanon, and the Old Man in the Mountain. I pretty much stopped there.
It's interesting because I started, I lived in Lebanon, so I started with the Lebanon, and I got a few old ones of stagecoaches in Hanover and a couple of things like that, and then I saw one of the old Hitchcock, one of the first.
Yeah.
And so now I've got, like you, I have a collection of Hitchcock. I'd like to check mine against yours sometime.
Well,
Tell them about the free postage.
what I'm working on now is getting a DVD made of old pictures of Hitchcock, and I'm gonna call it.
I mean, I couldn't believe how many pictures are out there.
However, there's not much inside,
No.
so I went to the archives but they're at Dartmouth College now, and took a bunch of pictures of the pictures. And I'm gonna do a DVD of Hiram Hitchcock's legacy, 1893 to 1993. I got a picture of the staff in 1894. Had 4 doctors and 2 nurses. That was the staff of the hospital.
But it's interesting, how you get to a point where you're collecting it.
Yeah.
Came from different
When
directions.
I get that
but-
done, I'll make sure you get a copy of it.
Thank you.
I find that I was, like I said, I was fortunate enough to build or rebuild, renovate a lot of buildings in Lebanon, so whenever I find a postcard, I did the Methodist Church when it burned, I rebuilt that. I did the Cottage Community Building, I did Ava, I did the Lebanon College and Woolworth Building, I've done the Alice Day Hospital. There's so many buildings in Lebanon, and I've actually had it handy that yeah, that's a side thing for me. I try to get pictures or any information on any of those.
Well, I first heard about Paul about maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. I saw a person downtown, and she says, "You didn't come to my yard sale." I said, "Well, I didn't know you had it." And I said, "Well, it's a woman that used to work with the school." She said, "Yeah." I said, "I had 25 or 30 Lebanon postcards, and we got talking." She says, she found our collection. She said, "I would have given them to you." Well, and I'm sure she would have. Well, I said, "Who'd you sell them to?" Well, she sold them to Tom Beckett. And so about 2 weeks later, I see Tom. I said, "Tom, did you get the postcard?" "No, sold to Paul Tremblay."
I bet they were all sold at the same price.
Well, no. Tom buys to resell.
Yeah,
So we race each other around. Yeah,
Well, I think-
I don't resell, he does, so
Yeah.
fortunately, we get along pretty much.
Right.
But,
Well, I think the thing with probably with all of us is that what's really fun is the finding them.
Yeah.
Hunting for them, and it kind of gives you
Oh,
something
that's
to do.
the whole
and you're,
thing, I mean,
you're,
that's the whole
Yeah.
game.
Of course, I tell these folks that they're unfair because I see them at postcard shows, and there's 2 of them.
One of my favorite stories is, everyone knows that Lebanon is known for its fountains and beautiful fountains, and we're seeing them come back now. Ray and I were at a postcard show and looking through everything, and I found this card of West Lebanon, and it's where 12A cuts off from the bottom of Seminary Hill. You're shaking your head.
No. It was one of Dorothy Bond's
Oh, that's right.
photos that she loaned me to
That's
do that DVD.
Oh, yeah.
The 250th anniversary, whatever, and it was a fountain at the base of Seminary
I
Hill.
never
And
knew it.
that house
Absolutely
that's there with that stone step
Right,
on the
yeah.
corner of the porch, that's in the picture.
Yeah.
Well, you know how you can look at a picture about a million times and keep on finding something different? I was looking at the postcard that I picked out of Main Street, and if you look right before the firehouse, there's a fountain.
Really? Yes. Oh, no, that's
No.
not a fountain, that's a watering hole.
Watering
That's the
trough.
watering
Water
trough.
trough,
Yeah,
yeah,
watering
yeah.
trough, horse watering.
That's a horse
That's
fountain.
awfully tall. I'm used to a horse trough being the long wood thing sitting down on the ground. But, I guess that hunting for postcards being fun is all in the eye of the beholder. My poor wife, when I say, "Hey, let's go to Gucci," she comes along, she looks, but she spends more time over in the Cabot shop and in the other store. She just has to drag me out after a couple hours.
Yeah.
My personal interest started way long ago when I was young. My grandparents had a place up in North Conway, and it was called Peepo Day. We called it Peepo Day. But there were postcards of it called Sunrise Cottage, and it really wasn't the sun, the moon, Moonrise Cottage. It wasn't the moon, it was the sun. But it was on the top of candy boxes. It was postcards on calendars. Where did we find the calendar?
Virginia.
I mean, you go all the
Yeah.
country and you find things
And
from
one of
Lebanon
those,
or.
one of the postcards on the back has that French talking about they're gonna go see the old, man face or
Yeah.
whatever.
The old stone,
The old
stone
face,
Stone
stone face, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's part of my old man of mountain collection.
Well, of course, what you like to do is you like to find Lebanon stuff, say in Rhode Island or
cheap.
Virginia,
Yeah.
or, yeah.
Mississippi.
Yeah, right, right.
Right. That's why you always look.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lebanon Historical Society Presents. You may visit LebanonNHhistory.org for more information on the Society. If there's a topic you would like to see, send an email to lebhistsoc@aol.com. The first person to answer our trivia question correctly last time was Patty Rookwood. She said that Lebanon was named by settlers after the town they came from in Connecticut. Today's trivia question is, what year did Lebanon become a city? Email your answer to lebhistsoc@aol.com. Thank you for watching.